The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It is Thursday, and I'm having a day already, let me just tell you. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties here this morning, and so if you're watching us on the live show, normally we have a way that you can, there's a box there that says Shannon is answering right now, and it's live, and you can type your question in. Having some technical difficulties with that this morning. We're working on it, and that should be up and running soon, but Matt's going to show you some different ways that you can write into us in the meantime, because we have email and we have Facebook and all kinds of wonderful things that you can do, and I'll let you know, I'll update you as the show goes on when the live feature on the website is available. But at this moment in time, it is not available. I cannot see if you're trying to write to me on the live feature. Working on it, though. I do want to remind you, however, that there's only one place to watch the show live, and that is autism-live.com, and usually when we're live, that feature is there, and it will be, hopefully, by the end of the show. Okay, but we really appreciate that, different things for different people, how you communicate, and we just love when you interact with us, and there are lots of different ways to interact, and as I said, you're seeing some of them on the screen. I'll be paying a little bit closer attention to Facebook and Twitter as we wait to see when the live feature is actually available. We are going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism and how you and I can be more effective, more efficient working with a child on the autism spectrum, and how all of us can reach our fullest potential. Really, that's what this is all about. A lot of what we talk about, admittedly, is ABA. I want you to know that we talk about it because ABA has been shown to be effective in creating progress for all of our kids. Is ABA the only game in town? No. Is it the only thing that you're going to do when you're helping a child on the autism spectrum? No. In fact, that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today, is that, there are lots of other things to do, but truthfully, and I'm sure that there are some people who will disagree with me, and I used to candy coat it a little bit and say, well, ABA is a really good thing and you should consider it. And then I will tell you what happened that changed my mind and changed the way I say it now, because I say to everybody now, everybody needs to be doing ABA. Everybody. And I'm not just talking about kids on the autism spectrum, but especially if you have a child on the autism spectrum, or you have a child who is having difficulty learning something, or you have a child who's engaging in challenging behavior. If any of those things are true, then you really need to focus on getting some ABA in your home and in your child's education plan. And the reason why I changed from being, well, you might want to consider it, to you need to consider it, is that I ran into some parents who had heard about ABA, heard that it was something that was positive, but they said, we didn't really think that it was necessary, and now we're kicking ourselves. And those parents expressed to me, I wish that somebody had said, no, this isn't a question. You need to find the way to do this. And so I really took that to heart, because I was one of those parents at the beginning of when my son was diagnosed with autism that ABA was, I know I'm going to say this and a lot of you are going to cringe, ABA was offered to us free of charge. I live in the state of California, and they have something called the regional centers, and at that point in time, if your child had a diagnosis, and my son did, they offered it to you for free. Now, in different and varying amounts, right? But I sort of, by luck of lottery, the place that I lived, they offered, a sizable amount of ABA for free. And my initial response was, no, thank you. I'll pass on that because I'd heard some negative things about ABA that turned out not to be true. And eventually I ran into the right people at the right time who showed me their child and said, oh, no, 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 no. You go back and tell them you want 40 hours. Not just that you want it, but that you want 40 hours. And when I think about how different my life would be had I not run into that family at that time and lived where I lived, oh, let me just tell you, the shiver runs up my spine. And I think about it all the time about the fact that had this family not been as adamant with me as they were, maybe I wouldn't have gotten it. You know, I was so tired. I was so downtrodden. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten it. Maybe I wouldn't have fought as hard. Maybe my husband and I wouldn't have gone through what we went through in order to make it work. And I don't know where we would be right now instead of where we are, which is that I have a lovely little boy who is not without his challenges, but he's 9 and he is in completely neurotypical mainstream 4th grade, excelling and talking about when he goes to college and his friends and those kinds of things. And more importantly, in my book, he's talking because there was a point in time when that was not only not happening, but didn't look like it was ever going to happen. So, you know, you need to get the ABA on board. I'm just going to say that so that you can't ever come back to me and say, Shannon, you didn't tell me. You need to get the ABA on board. Different amounts for different kids, right? And we talk about that all the time, but ABA needs to happen. And we talk about that on the show, and we talk about ABA and how to be good ABA parents. But again, we talk about the full gamut, the emotional experience, the different things that you want to do with your child besides ABA, in addition to ABA, and the world of the autism community and some of the different things that we face, right? I know I spent a little bit of time on Facebook this morning and got a little bit overwhelmed because some of the things happening right now, some stories, some of which we're going to be covering in the next couple of days. But there is a lot to be excited about. A lot of things, a lot of possibilities are available right now, and we're going to talk about those today. But we like to start every morning with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we take one word, one phrase, one anagram, and try to figure out what in the hey nanny nanny are they talking about, because we want to be able to understand these terms and especially understand them when they're used in conjunction with our children. And like all the things that we teach our children, we don't want to get overwhelmed, right? Because we know that that's not a good teaching strategy, to be overwhelmed. And instead, we want to take this piecemeal, a little bit at a time, get comfortable with these terms. So today's phrase is PDD NOS. Okay. We talked a little bit this week about what an autism spectrum diagnosis is. And right now, the criteria with which we work when someone is being diagnosed, there it is. There's basically 3 different things that we hear most often when a child is included in an autism spectrum disorder. We hear classic autism, right? We hear, see, it's that kind of a day, technically. We hear Asperger's, and then we hear PDD NOS. Okay, so what is the PDD NOS? Because there was a period of time, especially in the early 2000s, when a lot of people were frustrated because this is the diagnosis that they were getting, PDD NOS. It's sort of like a Chinese restaurant menu. You know how when you get the lunch special and they say you can pick 1 from column A and 2 from column B and 1 from column C. An autism spectrum diagnosis is a lot like that. There's 3 columns. There's a column about speech deficit. There is speech and, let's just call it speech. Then there is a column on social. I was going to say communication because it's starting to get melded together for the new diagnosis, but let's call it speech and communication. Then the second column is social. And the third column is repetitive and restrictive behaviors. Those are the kinds of the oddities that come along with autism. You know, the perseveration with obsession with slamming doors, opening and closing doors. Kids who will lay on their side and look at an object like this. When they line up their cars, those kinds of different things. Having obsessive compulsive desires to do things. Interests that are odd. You know, my son was obsessed with the vacuum cleaner and grates. man, anytime we were out walking and he saw a grate, nothing would do, but he wanted to lay on his stomach and look through the grate, and there was no way of talking him out of it, right? Those are the restrictive and repetitive behaviors. The social things, that's eye contact and being interested in other people, pointing at things, pointing things out to people, being interested in other people instead of things. And of course, the communication, language, and this is acquiring language, all right? So you have to have a certain number from each one of the columns in order to qualify for a classic autism diagnosis. And we're going to talk tomorrow a little bit about what would qualify you for an Asperger diagnosis. But PDD NOS is basically when you have symptoms from these columns, but not enough from enough of the right columns for it to add up to autism. So it's a lot of times people think of PDD NOS as a lesser form of autism, and I think that the vast majority of the time that's probably the truth, although it's very possible that your child could have severe repetitive and restrictive behaviors and not have enough other things to qualify for another diagnosis, but the way it manifests, this obsessiveness and this inflexibility is really disabling. And so to you at home, you're sitting there and saying, man, you know, I'm having huge issues with my child. My child is very disabled by these symptoms, and yet I don't qualify for a diagnosis. And in some cases, especially in the last decade, a PDD NOS sometimes excluded you from getting funding for specific services, which was really hard on a lot of families. And it's part of the reason why the DSM-5 is supposed to come out in 2013, and we're no longer going to have the classifications of autism and Asperger and PDD NOS. It's all going to be autism spectrum disorder, and instead they're going to rate, you have to have a certain number of symptoms again, and they're going to rate whether, you know, maybe you do have a social deficit and your eye contact isn't great, but is it mild, moderate, or severe? And so the rating system will be based on individual symptoms, how severe they are. We don't know what that's going to look like yet. We got to see a preview of that last fall, but, you know, then it went back for revision. So, you know, jury is still out, and there's a great deal of trepidation around it, but we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, if you have a child and somebody uses the term PDD NOS, let's look at, it stands for pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, a diagnosis given to a person with atypical symptomology for autism. It means you don't fit the exact criteria. And our working definition for this, diagnosis given to individuals who do not fully meet the criteria for autistic disorder or Asperger syndrome. It does not mean that your child isn't having issues. It does not mean that you're not equally tired, frustrated, and overwhelmed. It in some cases from some service providers means you don't qualify for services, which that is a bit of a disservice. And hopefully that will be something that gets righted sooner as opposed to later, because it all comes down to, let's help the children. Let's help the teenagers. Let's help the adults, because the thing that we know for sure is that there are some disabling aspects of autism, and that we can make progress on all of those with all children if we take the right strategies and use ABA and a host of other things as well. Okay, we always start with a question of the day, and our question, all this week we've been talking about what do you want to accomplish in 2013 for your child? What do you want to accomplish for yourself? And today we want to know, what do you wish you were better at? And this can be something, a skill that you have never even tried to acquire, like maybe you'd like to learn the piano. Or it could be something that you do on a regular basis, but that you wish you were better at it. Do you wish that you were better at social conversation and making new friends and introducing yourself to people? I wish that I was better at ending conversations. I really have been working on that the last year, and I think I am getting better at it, but I'd like to be even better. Ending conversations. I would like to be better at being able to focus my attention and my energy towards the things that I want to accomplish, as opposed to just letting my attention be wherever it is. I am like that dog in the movie Up that, I'm so focused on something and I'm talking to you about it, and then the squirrel goes by and I'm a squirrel. And I think I'm probably not the only parent in the world that feels that way. And by the way, these are things that we can work on, with ABA. There are some great lessons that have to do with what we attend to. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on in the program, because we always have a topic of the day, or really it's the topic of the week now. And this entire week, we're talking about goal setting those goals. And we're now moving into, at this point in the week, once we've set the goals, figuring out how we achieve them. And again, this is for our children, but also for ourselves. I remember, I didn't have my son till I was 40, and I really wanted to have a child, and I thought that it wasn't going to happen, and we had miscarried beforehand, and it was a very emotional thing for me. I felt that clock ticking, if you know what I mean. And then when we finally did have a child, and I was 40 years old, about to be 41, and they hand me this baby, and there was sort of this moment in my head where I thought, well, this is it. This is the miracle that I got. I've asked for everything and gotten it, and so I need to chill out and not ask for anything more out of life. And I've used the expression that personal ambition, was tottering. I think that's typical for most new moms, that you kind of lose yourself in your baby. It's like falling in love all over again. And great. And right about the time when I think most moms take back personal ambition, when your child starts walking and talking, and you start going, okay, I'm free to move about the cabin. I'm free to want things again for myself. Was when my child started to descend into autism. And so personal ambition went completely away. And depression came to live at the house with autism, and a host of financial problems and things that really were taking my attention away from me. And it's only been in the last couple of years that other moms around me have reminded me that that's not how it needs to be, that we are allowed to have ambition in addition to having a child with an autism spectrum disorder. So I throw that out to you, and I hope that you'll join me as we set goals this week and this year, and that we check in on them. These are not resolutions, right? Because resolutions are done by March usually, if even then. But that we set some goals together and help each other, because accountability is a big part of achieving goals, and that we bond together and make some stuff happen for ourselves. All right. And to that end, some of the different things that we're going to be talking about today, we have a myth of the day. We haven't done that in weeks, so I'm very excited about our particular myth today. We have a school success tip for you, and in the second hour, we are going to be joined by BCBA Evelyn Gould. I know it's not her typical day. Usually we have Angela Persicki on Thursdays, but we couldn't have Evelyn on Tuesday, and we couldn't have Angela today, so we do a segment called Making Room with Evelyn, and as I mentioned, she is a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, and she's going to be talking with us about goals and using ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, to help us to achieve our goals, which ultimately, by the way, helps our children to achieve their goals. When we're productive and positive and moving forward, we set that example, and it makes us more prepared, more ready to be able to help our children to reach their fullest potential. It's all a good thing. So we're going to be doing all of that and more coming up in the next 2 hours. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to be talking about setting goals and what we pay attention to, that thing that I was mentioning earlier that I want to be better at, paying attention to the things that are going to get me where I want to go. And I hope that you'll find it informative too. So we'll take a short break, and we'll be back right after these messages.
Nick was nonverbal till he was 2 years old. We had lots of behavioral problems with him, and we had a lot of social problems at school that were somewhat mysterious.
Nick Yates was diagnosed with autism at an early age, but he didn't begin receiving intensive ABA until he was 5 years old.
4, 5. Fantastic, Dee. Give me 5, buddy. All right.
Despite great progress, Nick, like so many young individuals on the spectrum, was bullied throughout his school years.
I just want to be able to be a regular kid out there in the world and get along with others.
By the time he was a teenager, Nick's progress was significant enough that he lost his autism diagnosis and was deemed recovered. Today, Nick is a charming, socially savvy college senior who travels and is an emotional speaker on the subject of autism and recovery. I sat down with Nick recently to talk about autism through his eyes and his reaction to the Sandy Hook shootings. So Nick, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Shannon.
You know, I always enjoy an opportunity to talk to you.
Me too.
So Nick, you're a college student.
Yes.
And you're in your
My final year.
final year.
Yes.
And thinking about potentially becoming a teacher.
Correct.
And what would you like to teach?
Either social studies or humanities.
So high school or college?
High school or middle school.
Wow.
Yes.
And why that age range?
Well, somebody has to do it.
That's
And
true.
I'm up for things that are challenging.
Okay. I'm wondering, when people ask you to explain autism, what do you say?
It's really not easy to explain simply because it affects everybody differently.
Yeah.
But when you look at the commonalities, what you find are people who have a lot of problems interacting socially and communicatively. So that's only part of it.
Yeah.
But that's really what a lot of those affected by it have in common.
Absolutely. I know you met Jack Riley, the little boy in the A word. And you and I had an opportunity to talk about that. That was a little bit of an emotional thing for you to meet.
It was,
him.
and you know, I was talking to his father, and before I was supposed to hang up, he interjects saying that he wants to talk to his brother. By his brother, he meant me. And I cannot tell you what that meant to me.
That's a wonderful thing. So I have to ask you, we had some events in the world at Sandy Hook. The following day, news started to come out where they were attaching autism to the event. What did that feel like for you and for your family? What kinds of things were you guys talking about?
We weren't happy with it,
Yeah.
all right. I'm certainly not happy
Yeah.
with the link. There's no research that shows that those who are affected by autism or related disorder are far likelier to be perpetrators of such violence than victims.
People with autism are no more likely to commit atrocities than anyone else. The sad truth of the matter is that individuals with ASD are far more likely to actually be victims of violence and bullying than they are to commit it themselves.
I think also what needs to happen is that we start to value mental health care professionals a lot more. Because I believe that if we did, then we wouldn't have had as many incidents as what happened
I agree.
the other week. And also in Oregon or Wisconsin or Colorado,
Absolutely.
because any death is wrong if it's a murder.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, I so appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about this and to give us your viewpoint, because I always appreciate your viewpoint on everything.
Thank you.
And if there's one thing that you wanted people watching to know about autism, what would it be?
I wish that some people would realize that there are those who have far greater disabilities than those affected by a disability such as autism. In particular, this kind of disability is one that is invisible, and it's a lack of empathy or understanding or love. And we need a lot more of that. The best anybody can do is be themselves and treat everybody as they would like to be treated.
Absolutely. Right. Do unto others
Yes.
as you would have done unto you.
And practice what you preach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. We talk a lot on the show about executive function skills for ourselves and for our children. And basically what we're talking about are all the steps that you need to make any goal achievable. And yesterday we talked a little bit about how you set a goal, and it has to be something that is attainable, but it could be a short-term goal, it could be a long-term goal. We don't even realize it, but in every given moment of every day, we're setting mini goals. When we're dreaming about things, when we're daydreaming about things, we're setting sometimes long-term goals. The difference between daydreaming about it, though, and setting it in action is, we've said it before, you have to name it to claim it, right? And setting yourself a series of events, sort of a stairway to get a path to get to that goal. So we set the goal, we set a realistic goal. We talked yesterday about working backwards, saying, well, if I want to have gotten my college degree by 2018, then in 2017 I have to have done this, in 2016 I have to have done this, in 2015 I have to have done this, in 2014 I have to have done this, which means that in 2013 I got to make this happen, which means that by June I have to have this happen, which means that this week I need to do X, Y, and Z, right? We're working backwards towards that goal. But part of it, a lot of us start out with those good intentions and saying, I want to make this happen, and then stuff happens. You know that the bumper sticker that they used to have that went along with Forrest Gump about, S happens? Because it does. Day to day, things happen. Little tiny things will intrude, and sometimes big things intrude that take us off course. Well, part of that is, because we can't make that go away, right? Stuff is going to happen. Poop is going to happen. And if we allow it to take us completely off course, well, then, we're not going to achieve these goals. And by the way, this is true for us and it's true for our kids on the spectrum. So when we teach our kids on the spectrum how to achieve goals, which works for us, we teach them how to attend to things that are going to help us achieve our goals and how to inhibit our responses to things that aren't going to help us. Example, maybe this morning, on your way to take your child to school or on your way to work or whatever it was that you needed to do, you probably had a goal in your head, a time, an expected time of arrival or a time that you were hoping to arrive at. That's a goal, really. I want to be at work by 8:15. And you had a plan at some point, probably, that involved, and it's a plan that you probably do every morning, and you maybe don't even think about some aspects of it, if you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and that's going to get you out the door at a certain time, which hopefully will get you to your desk by 8:15. And stuff happens, right? Suddenly the phone rings, and we don't stop and consider it sometimes in the moment, but if we stop and answer that phone, are we going to have time to get out the door at a specific time, which will then set us up for success to get there at 8:15. How often, I know this is an area where I said before, this is one of my goals this year, to attend to the things that are going to help me to achieve my goals and not inhibit my response to things that grab my attention that pull me off focus. When I go and pick up the phone, and the other thing that I'm not good at is ending the conversation. And usually, you know what I do now? I start most conversations with people. This is like step one in a 32-step thing, and I only have step one. I'll start the conversation and say, I can't talk long because I need to X, Y, and Z. So I'm letting them know this cannot be a lengthy conversation. Does that actually help me to get off the phone? No, it doesn't. And what I'm learning is that if there's something that I need to do and I'm on a tight timeline and the phone is ringing, that I say to myself, I do not have time to answer this phone call right now. I will return that person's call when I have time. It's new territory for me, but I am actually inhibiting my attention from going on to the thing that's not going to help me to achieve the goal that I'm working on right now. Now, sometimes talking to somebody on the phone is a part of the goal, right? And we don't want to completely let go of returning phone calls, but just an example of how we get off track. When we go to work, and we're driving usually in a typical way, if we were to see a billboard and decide to pull off and look at the billboard or, stop at a store, we would have an understanding that we're probably not going to get there on time where we wanted to go. And yet maybe we don't do that, but we do a lot of other things that pull us out of focus. That, you see a piece of paper on the dining room table that, I forgot I have to deal with that. And so we stop and deal with that, which is achieving another goal, but suddenly we're late to work. So we do have to kind of set priorities about what's most important here. Which goals are we working on that are the most important? And then there is that element of taking just a breath when things happen and thinking to ourselves, okay, is this going to help me to achieve this goal, or is this going to throw me off of my timeline? And it may seem like a small thing, right? But think about it in the context of your children. When you ask your child to get ready to go and do something, and it may be that your child is too young to do this yet, but you're thinking and hoping that someday you're going to get to this point. I know for a lot of years I thought, oh, will I ever have this with my child? But I can now say to him, we have to be ready to go in 5 minutes. And what do you need to do in the next 5 minutes in order to be ready and at the door in 5 minutes? And he can now list for me, well, you know, I need to use the restroom, and I need to put on my shoes, and I need to put my jacket on, and I need to grab my DS. And I say, great, that's all wonderful. And, you know, I say to him, so maybe you should start that now. And he says, I just want to watch the next minute of this thing on TV, or I just want to finish this game. We all do this. But if he does that, is he going to be able to meet me at the door in 5 minutes? Probably not. And it's the same thing for all of us. So if we make ourselves aware of our goals, and one of the things that I advocate for is putting up visual aids for our kids and for ourselves, whether it's the thing that we're going to get when we do it, or it's reminding us of, you know, what it is that we have to attend to. Give yourself a visual aid. I have a little post-it that sits by the phone, very unobtrusive, with a question mark that it reminds me before I go to pick up the phone, is this a good time to do this? Just a question mark, so people come into my house and they're not looking at it and seeing me write a note to myself saying, hey, crazy, don't answer the phone right now. Just a question mark. And I look at that and I go, oh, right, I was doing something. This can wait. This actually can wait. When we are better at attending to the things that the goals that we want to set, we're more likely to achieve them. And when we do that, we model that for our children, and then they begin to see, and we can help them in a better way because we know what they're up against. We can all achieve our goals, or at least get a lot closer to them. It's a really good and powerful tool. We'll talk more about this today and tomorrow, but we're going to take a short break and show you, I believe that the next thing that we're going to show you is our What's Left cooking segment for this month, and we'll see Lisa Ackerman making mac and no cheese. It's a great recipe. We do this at home. It's absolutely fabulous. Check it out.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hey, welcome back to Autism Live. We heard you. Everybody wants
macaroni and cheese.
Yeah, but we're gonna make it allergy free. But here's what's the crazy part of this macaroni and cheese. It's actually healthy.
And it tastes good.
Yeah, it tastes really good.
That's the most important part.
So we're going to start. We got our water boiling. There's so many variations on the pasta. We're using today a corn pasta. We can verify with the manufacturer that we have a GMO-free product. So let's go ahead and put that in there.
Ooh,
and if you don't mind, stir that up for me, my friend.
Now it's sticking a little bit to the bottom.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
We maybe add a little more high heat oil and spread that around again. One thing you gotta know about gluten-free pasta, if you overcook this, it becomes mush. Let's move this guy over to the other burner so you can see what I'm doing. And now we're gonna start with the old macaroni and cheese sauce. What's great is there's a lot of choices for, you know, different soups. And the way that I look at soups, and again, please follow the recipe on your screen right now. I don't like to measure very often. But what I like to use is a creamy butternut squash soup. So this soup is great because it adds a lot of flavor to the dish, but also gives people another serving of vegetables. With kids, we don't want to over season. Maybe with the adults, we can season some for the kids first, pull it out, serve them, and then add a little more, you know, garlic powder or onion powder or other types of things into your dish. So the next most important thing on this recipe is we're gonna add in a thickener and the faux cheese. Now some people like their sauce really thick, so you just add in more cornstarch or more arrowroot, so that's not a big deal. How's that doing? You think it's ready?
I think it's done.
Okay, so why don't we switch? I'll take that, you do that.
Okay.
And I'm going to strain this bad boy here. Here, let me turn that off.
Okay.
Or we're going to cause trouble again.
Trouble in Lisa's kitchen.
Yeah, no.
That's another show.
Don't, yeah, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get this all strained. It's a good consistency. So I'm going to check to make sure our pasta is cooked. So really you just want to make sure, just like any pasta, it's a little bit squeezy, a little bit. Nice. Dude, good job. We're good.
Looks yummy.
So even though the cheese is not totally melted, it's okay. Don't panic. What's important is that you're going to love this recipe once you eat it. What I enjoy most about this recipe is that it smells good, but this stuff is amazing. So if you don't mind, I'm going to serve you some up, and you can maybe blow a little bit on it so you don't burn your mouth. Sorry, I'm once a mom, always a mom.
Just like we tell our kids.
I know, right?
God, I can't wait. I'm excited.
So I'm going to give a shot of this too, but
Oh my gosh, that is so good.
this is the ultimate comfort food. So
Oh, it's so
Isn't
good.
it good?
And I'm not just saying that. It is really good. It literally tastes like something our kids would really like. And that sweetness is really, really, really good.
So the bonus for us is that when we're serving this to our kids, they're actually getting a full serving of vegetables in this. So instead of just eating a bunch of carbs and worthless calories, you're actually getting some good stuff in this. And we'll be back next time. I hope you join us again here on Autism Live. We're really loving the feedback, and if you have additional feedback, here's how you get it to us. You can send it to us via email at autismlive@gmail.com. On Facebook, facebook.com/autismlive. And also there's thousands of recipes waiting for you to discover them with pictures and different things on the TACA website. So you can hit TACA on the web, tacanow.org, and we'll be back. Hopefully we'll get to do this again.
I had so much
Maybe
fun.
we'll have a little wine, but you got to join us next time. We look forward to seeing you then.
Bye guys. We're going to keep eating.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get.
Welcome back. We've been talking a little bit about goal setting, and it's time for us to talk about the myth of the day. And this is something that I feel really passionately about talking about today because it goes hand in hand with goal setting. A lot of you earlier this week, I asked you, what are your goals for your children for this year? What kinds of things do you want to achieve with them? And you guys wrote in a whole host of things, which is just lovely. And really, I didn't read a single thing that I didn't think was attainable. And that was very heartening to me too, because a big part of setting goals is that we don't go pie in the sky, right? I'm a big proponent of dream and dream big. You know that saying about if you're going after Moby Dick, pack the tartar sauce. And I think it's okay to go after Moby Dick. I really, really do. And to not let people stop you from dreaming. My goodness, where would we be if Walt Disney had been told that's a really silly idea? So I do believe in, dreaming big. I also believe in making sure that you have goals that are really realistic and attainable, because sometimes when it's too far away, if I had the goal to be a size 6 by the end of this year, do any of us honestly think that I could get there? I'm just going to say I don't think so. Not at this age. Not with everything else I have going on. I'd have to give up so much else, right? But I can, take some of this weight off. That is a realistic goal. So we want to set realistic goals for our kids too. And you guys wrote in some beautiful things, all of which I thought were realistic. And I mentioned at the top of the show that we do talk about ABA. And there's a good reason why we talk about ABA, because it's scientifically proven to be effective for all of our kids. When we talk about autism, one of the greatest things I've ever heard is that it's not autism anymore, it's autisms. That there are all different types of autism. The onset of autism is different for different kids, how it presents itself, the symptoms, how severe those symptoms are all different. The speed at which the child learns, what the child has access to, all different. And our expectation that we have something that's cookie cutter that's going to work the same for all of them is really unrealistic, right? And there are all different types of therapies that parents engage in with their children on the autism spectrum. And I think it's important that we talk about ABA, as I said, because it has been scientifically proven to be effective at creating progress for all all of our children, no matter how profoundly affected they are, no matter how high functioning they are. We can see progress in all of them using the principles of ABA if we get good quality ABA therapy and the right amount. Now, that's a lot of asterisks in there, and all of those asterisks are tied to the individuality of the child, of their symptoms and their ability to learn and their circumstances. But it does not mean that ABA is the only thing that anybody can do or should do. There is this myth that is pervasive and there are some people who perpetuate it, I'll be honest with you, that if you're doing ABA, you're all in on ABA, and that means you're not doing anything else. I'll be honest with you, I have heard that from some people, and I have heard that turn some parents away from ABA. And it's a very disconcerting thing because you don't have to be 100% pure ABA and do nothing else. We had Dr. Doreen Granpeche on the show yesterday, and I say it all the time, she is a visionary in the field of autism. And one of the things that I really respect and admire about Dr. Granpeche is that while she is a very experienced ABA practitioner, and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, which she founded, has had more effect on more children in the world than any other single ABA provider. So we're talking about a voice of experience. And she was saying, I said over 2 decades yesterday, and she said, actually, it's over 3 decades. You would never know that to look at her. She looks way too young for that to be the case. However, has had a vast array of experience with tens of thousands of children on the autism spectrum and helped them to reach their fullest potential. And yet she is one of the only people that I hear very loudly, outspokenly in the field of ABA talking about the fact that our children are whole beings and have other things going on besides autism, and that we have to be mindful of those things. So my son received his therapy from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and so I had the good fortune of coming into autism with the expectation that I needed to look at my child as a whole child. I realize that that is not all of your experience is out there, that some of you have written in and said that you went to an ABA provider and the ABA provider said to you, oh, you can't be doing biomedical treatment while you're doing ABA with us. I think that is appalling. And I know many of you have said, well, we just didn't tell our ABA provider. And I think the vast majority of parents that I talk to that have had good results with their children have been able to look at their child as a whole child and take care of business doing ABA and also finding other things that speak to their child. I do like to remind everybody to be very mindful of the fact that there are people out there who want to take your money and your time. And I wish that that were not the case, right? But we need to be adults about it and realize that there are some people out there who are quacks and who are doing things with children that are not evidence-based, that have no reality, and they're not seeing results, and they can't point to any results, not with any children. And those are the people that you want to avoid. So be smart about it. But there are lots of people who are doing things with children and they're seeing results with some of the children and not with other of the children. And then you can look at it and say, okay, which type of autism does my child have? Is it possible? What are the pluses and the minuses? How much is this going to cost us? Is there any possibility of doing harm? Because that's, boy, number one on my husband and my manifesto with autism, we will do no harm. That we're not interested in making our child a petri dish to experiment, drugs that FDA has not looked at. I'm not interested in that. But be mindful and make sure that you're looking at things. There are great organizations out there that talk about what's science-based and what's evidence-based. I know that, a lot of times people are dismissive of something and saying, well, it's not shown to be effective with all of our kids. I believe in my heart as a parent that someday, and I hope soon, and there are great minds that are working on it, that we will be able to phenotype autism, and that in my lifetime, and I hope even in the next 5 years, that we're going to be able to say, oh, your child has type 32B autism. And what we found to be effective with type 32B is this, and this. You want to do ABA, but you'll also want to do these other companion therapies along with it, and that has been shown to be effective with this type of autism. And by the way, this child has type A21 autism, which will also use ABA, but a different amount of ABA, and these 3 therapies that go along with it, and this has shown to be effective with this type of autism. Of course, we're still going to want to consider what's reinforcing for the child, but I really believe that when we get into looking at the different types of autism and what therapies work well, that is when we are going to see a huge shift in how autism is treated and how our kids do. Until then, I want to remind you, do get ABA on board, but don't let anybody lie to you and say that you have to do ABA and solely ABA and nothing else. It's not the truth. It's not what you're going to hear from parents is shown to be really effective. Look at your child as a whole and make sure that you take care of business. So myth of the day shattered. When you're doing ABA, you don't have to do it to the leaving out everything else, to the exclusion. That's the word I want, of everything else. Isn't that a lovely way of looking at the world? Okay, we are going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be looking at your answers to the question of the day. Stick with us.
Every child with autism deserves a bright future.
Without further clarification, the Affordable Care Act could actually result in less benefits for individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We urge Catherine Sebelius to clarify the Affordable Health Care Act.
She can make one change, one little minor change, to make applied behavioral analysis be part of the health care plan.
By signing this petition, you are protecting the healthcare benefits of individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We need to make sure
that we are heard
and seen.
Sign a petition at autism-live.com.
Here's how you can show your infinite support. Create your own infinity ribbon. What you're going to do is take a ribbon that's been cut about 8 inches long, and you're going to grab one end and then twist it, and then take the 2 ends and join them together, and then take this together, and then I'm going to flip it around and take another piece of tape, and what I have is double-sided sticky tape. Squeeze down. You have your very own infinity ribbon.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
With ABA, the possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite. Welcome back. Our question for you today was, what do you wish that you were better at? And I'm just trying to understand what it is that this person is writing. Somebody wrote in and said better coping mechanisms. I think somebody else was writing and saying, I would like this better if you took off the T at the end. I think because I didn't word the sentence very well. There's a better way of saying it, and what can I tell you? Sometimes I write these at 2 o'clock in the morning. But going back to the better coping mechanisms, yes. And you know, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, right? In this area, but depending on, you know, I just went through an experience a couple of weeks ago, and it really brought home to me how we all react to things differently and how some of us cope with things in one way, and just the smallest thing can set somebody off. I know I shared on the show that my mom passed away in the beginning of December, and you know, we're still trying to find our footing with it. It's just, I kind of don't believe it still. But I had gone back over the holiday break to help go through my mother's things and to figure out what we're doing. And my mother had a piano, an upright piano, that she most specifically wanted to give to my son. And she had an opportunity to talk to him about that long before she passed away. And it's a great thing, and it's a great gift, and my son's very excited about it. It's just a little bit figuring out how to move a piano across the country is perhaps, when you don't have a whole lot of other stuff to move with it, it's a little bit of a thing. And it's a little overwhelming for me because it's tied to all the emotion and just, you know? And so I was in that moment and trying to cope with that. And I had called a moving company and said, you know, could you give me a quote on how much it would have cost to move the piano? And I said, and I kind of need to know fairly quickly. And they said, we'll send this gentleman over. The gentleman came over and, you know, I let him into the house because he was expected, total stranger though, right? Let him into the house and I was showing him and we were having a lovely conversation. And I did say, and the house, you know, there were packing boxes everywhere. And I said, don't attend to this, attend to this. This is what's going, just this. We just needed to go on the end of a truck and I need, you know, best possible price, but, you know, we need some insurance on it, want it to get there safely, so on and so forth. But we were having a fairly jovial conversation and he even had said, you know, I'm sorry for your loss. I said, thank you very much. We're talking about this whole thing. And then he gave me a price. Now, I'm somebody who has done enough sales in my life to know, you know, that there's always a point of negotiation that can happen. But when somebody is like so far outside your price point, there's no point, right? And I really was pressed for time and I was a little bit overwhelmed. And I said to the guy, he said the number and I said, I said, wow, okay, well, I really thank you for your time. Unfortunately, this isn't going to work and I'll show you to the door. And he said, well, you know, what did you think? You know, and he's saying all the salesman things on the way to the door. And I said, well, I'd actually talked to one company already and the price that they gave me was about half of that. So, you know, I just, that number is just so out of my league. I can't do it for that. I can't do it for anywhere close to that. And I want to be upfront about that. So I'm leaving room for him, you know, to say something, but really I just didn't think there was a negotiation. And he, you know, was saying things about, well, what was the other company? I told him the name. He said, oh, you know, they're terrible and they're just horrible. Okay. But in my head, because of my overwhelm, I was already done with him. And I said, you know what? It's okay. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I got to regroup because the number you just said just scared me beyond all possible belief. I said, if I have to, you know, I'll rent a U-Haul. and he said, well, you're not going to do that. And I said, well, no, probably not, but I also can't afford the number that you said. And I said, but I thank you so much for your time. And he said, well, let me give you my card because you're going to end up calling me anyway. Good salesman technique, right? And I said, you know what? I thank you so much, but I can assure you that I'm not. If that's our starting point, I'm not going to be calling you. But again, I thank you so much. And I was showing him out the door, and all of a sudden, he started to yell at me. He just started to yell at me and he said, you know, I don't have time for people like you. You know, I've been in this business for more than 20 years and if you think you know more about this. And I literally was so completely shocked by his response because it seemed to come out of nowhere. Plus which there was the whole thing of, I became afraid. I literally became afraid in that moment because I'm standing with him, not in my house, and I don't, you know, but I'm there with him, this total stranger, this man, and he's yelling at me. And I had been coping with all these other things that were a little overwhelming to me. And so I, you know, it's that when things happen and it's just a surprise to you. And I said, what just happened to him? I said, what did I say that offended you so badly? And he just continued to yell at me. But he was moving out the door as he was yelling at me, which was probably the only thing that saved me from calling the police. So I shut the screen door, and he stood on the steps yelling at me and telling me that he was sick and tired of people like me thinking that they knew better and wasting his time. And I shut the door, and it was the moment when, you know, talk about the coping mechanisms. I dealt with all the other things, but it was the moment that then, you know, I started to cry. And it occurred to me afterwards that, there were a whole lot of people's coping mechanisms in this moment, that my coping mechanism, that probably I was a little bit more dismissive than what he was used to, because the number was just too high. And I didn't mean anything by it, but my coping mechanism was, let's move on. This isn't going to work, so let's move on. And whatever was going on with him in that moment, I have no idea what his antecedent was. He probably had been to 5 people that day. Who knew if he had bill collectors at his house and he was planning on closing a deal for something and just pushed the number higher thinking I'm going to get away with something. And when I was so dismissive, he realized he'd blown it. I don't know. But coping mechanisms for all of us, and I think, when we think about our coping mechanisms, we also want to think about strengthening our children's coping mechanisms, because it is not only our coping mechanism, but whoever we're interacting with is really the reason why I was telling that story. Because how they cope with things then in turn affects how we'll cope with them. So a really great thing to be considered, dealing and finding, in that executive functions curriculum that I was talking about earlier, that's in skills, there are a whole lot of lessons about self-regulation, about recognizing the signs in yourself, so that when you get to a moment that you say to yourself, I'm not equipped to deal with this right now, that perhaps this is not the moment when I want to have this discussion, to understand our own emotions and to have emotional self-control. Because honestly, if you're a moving assessor and that you're going to go to strangers' homes, probably you need to be able to self-regulate and emotionally regulate so that you're not standing in people's homes yelling at them. I'm just going to guess that that's probably not a successful career path for you, even if you've been doing it for 20 years. Maybe you've been doing it too long. So, shoring up those coping mechanisms, of course, we all have moments where we're caught off guard, and but just like a fire drill, if we've practiced, what we can say to people in those moments, and if we practice how we're going to self-talk, right, the things that we're going to say to ourselves in those moments, we're more likely to be successful. So I love that executive functions curriculum in the skills program. I love it for our kids, but I love it for us too. It's going to help you with goal setting and help you with all those other things as well. All right, and I will try to word my questions a little bit more grammatically appropriate. I think that's what I want to say. I also want to remind all of you, while I'm here on the Facebook page, we're getting down to the last couple of days. There is a campaign right now from Paper Clouds Apparel, and they're a wonderful organization that partners with different other organizations that work with kids with special needs. And when you work with them, you submit art designs from kids that are involved with the organization, and they pick a couple of the designs. Usually they pick a girl design and a boy design, and they make t-shirts with these lovely designs on them. Right now, this week still, they are featuring a promotion that benefits the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. There is a girl t-shirt and a boy t-shirt, and I feel funny about promoting this because the boy t-shirt is my son's artwork, and I'm so proud of him, and it's such a beautiful shirt. And I want to remind all of you that you can still get those shirts. There they are. Matt is showing them to you. The girl shirt is just pickin' cute. It's just the cutest little girl doodle drawing. And my son's drawing is the robot drawing. I know many of you have written in and asked, can we get the robot drawing on the girl shirt? And unfortunately, you cannot. But I'm told that the V-neck that's listed as a man's shirt is really a unisex shirt. It's not the tapered shirt, and it's not the tee that everybody likes so much, but it is still an appropriate unisex shirt for women to wear. I encourage you to get that, and while you're there, tell them that you saw it on Autism Live. I know that the other day it was the first 20 people that mentioned Autism Live were going to get a free t-shirt by another artist. I don't know if that has already been filled, but it doesn't hurt to try, does it? So please get yourself a t-shirt. It will not only benefit Paper Clouds, and they hire individuals on the spectrum to help them in their office, so you'll be helping to put someone with special needs to work, but it will also, some of the proceeds go to the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, a wonderful organization. And let us know. Send us a picture of you guys, and there's kids t-shirts as well. Send us a picture of them wearing either the t-shirts, and we will show them here on the air. All right, we are going to take a break and go to the A word. This is the wonderful documentary being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders following the little boy Jack Riley. At the point that we're watching in the series, he's about 2.5 years old, very newly diagnosed, has been doing his ABA program now for a couple of months, and the parents are kind of settling into this rhythm. He's settling into a rhythm of how he learns and how he interacts with his therapist. And that doesn't mean that he's not pushing the envelope sometime, but he's adding more and more skills and learning more and more things. So take a look. This is the A word.
Jack Riley. Jack Riley, say hi, Mommy. Hi, Mommy. Turn and look at me when you say hi, Mommy. Hi, Mommy. Yeah. Good try.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody.
So how are things?
They're good.
Yeah.
He's doing great. He had an incident.
What are you gonna pick?
4th of July, we were out swimming with
What do you wanna play
another
with?
family out there, and he pushed a little girl in the pool. Little 3-year-old.
Was he playing or?
Well, yeah, she was jumping in, and there was the steps, and her dad was watching. She jumped in and sort of paddled to the steps, and she kept doing it. And he was laughing, and she was laughing, and then he just helped her.
Mickey.
So it wasn't malicious. But,
Yeah, he wasn't angry. I think it was.
And they did it again though, after we took him in.
It was more than like 5 minutes. I didn't make note of it.
You want a cracker? We'll come and get it.
There are 2 skills being displayed by Jack Riley right now. One is that he made eye contact, and the other is independently requesting an item without any prompting. These are both skills that he and his parents and therapists have been working on.
Can you say, I want a cracker?
I want cracker.
Can you say, I want a cracker?
Cheryl is prompting Jack Riley to use more than one word for his requests to build on his vocal skills. When Jack Riley began services 3 months ago, he was non-vocal with very little verbal skills. To be verbal is to communicate, whether it's with a gesture or signing or using pictures, for example. To be vocal is to communicate with audible words.
So if you had to pick maybe like your top 3 things to work on like when you're out in the community.
Trying to figure out what will make him compliant, in public when there's a lot of people. He kind of took off twice for the street.
It's inconsistent enough that you can't count on it. There's days that are great and days where he does one of the.
Or he'll say go.
Yeah, go. He says stop and he says go and starts up again.
Him staying with us, him even just walking hand in hand without, I'd say within fewer than 10 steps, he goes noodle and sits down.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an outing section in here. And then if you want whenever it works for you guys, at least if we can do it at least once a week with one of these guys, go on an outing to wherever you guys normally go.
Just to start getting him used to that, because it seems, with the activity, everything changes a little bit from him. Just gets so excited. And that's when I think most reason stops for him, and most of what he learns sort of goes out the window.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna spiral down. Spiral, spiral, spiral. Yay! Oh. To me, he sounds like he's talking more than before. I don't know, that's what I observed. Huh. You're talking a whole lot today. Do you want to play with your trains? Yes, good. Okay, should we open? Open. Okay, say open, please. But the fact that he is actually communicating is really, really cool. And they're actually words instead of just, utterances or, gestures. Yeah, it's really incredible. Incredible. Say, let's go. Let's go. Okay. Choo-choo, come on.
there, Jack Riley independently began playing with his train appropriately. What you see is what a typically developing kid would do, naturally. But kids with autism, most skills need to be taught until the behavior becomes natural. At this age, half of the ABA therapy occurs while the child is playing. The other half is in a structured environment and at the table, like you've seen in other episodes.
You want the train station?
Twice.
Station.
Yes.
That's a hard word. Station.
Yes.
Do you want it?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Wow, his yeses are very good.
They are.
Oh, and for NVI, we're also doing two-step actions within play. So like basically whatever it is he's playing with, we just have to do two-step actions, and he has to be able to imitate whatever we do. Do this. Choo-choo. You do it. Say choo-choo. Choo-choo. Good job. Okay, let's put it on the track here. Do this. Choo-choo. It's Riley's turn. Say choo-choo. Choo-choo. Yeah, here we go. So it's like little actions like that. Just, putting the train on the track, making it go, putting items in the train, imitating even vocally, like what we say during play. Like, here we go, choo-choo. Just so this will help generalize when he goes to preschool, because other kids will, be playing the trains too, and children naturally just imitate each other.
Right now, Jessica and Jack Riley are practicing using yes and no appropriately.
Do you want the shoe?
Yes.
Okay, here you go.
Yes.
Say no.
No.
Good. Stop. Put your fingers. Do you want the shoe?
Yes.
Say no.
No.
Good. So do you want the shoe?
No.
Okay. Do you want the ball toy?
Yes.
Okay, here you go.
Bottle.
Here you go. All right, it's over. Okay, here. Do you want a diaper?
Yes. No.
No. Okay. Do you want a diaper?
No.
Okay. Do you want a ball toy?
No.
No. Do you want the cars?
No.
No. Do you want a Nemo car?
No.
Okay. Do you want bubbles?
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Boo puppy.
Pop, 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 pop.
Boo puppy. Boo puppy.
Hi, can you sit up though? Sit up. Stand up. Ready? Set.
We have new snacks for him because we started to incorporate gluten yesterday. So I've got some stuff
Oh, okay,
that he hasn't had in a long time. Like we tried putting cut up bananas on his pancake plate last week, and not so well. He just threw them down. So I thought that kind of stuff would be easier now because he's been doing so well, and he's not. So we're still gonna have to have the battles, and I think we're just so happy to be done with the first battle, that we're sort of reluctant to start a new one, which is to start introducing new foods.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is now that we're taking him off of the GFCF stuff, we have more things to introduce him to.
Definitely.
And maybe he'll just get less anxious if we're giving him things that he used to love this stuff, but we took him off of it. He won't remember, but maybe it won't be such a big deal if some of the new foods he's getting are things that he's loving. You want to try cereal bar?
Ooh, yummy.
Are you looking funny?
Oh, Jack Riley.
Look better. Do you want to try cereal bar?
Cereal bar.
Cereal bar. Good talking.
Cereal bar.
Do you want to try?
Cereal bar.
Cereal bar.
Crystal clear.
Cookie.
You want to try?
Cereal bar.
Try these.
I love these.
So yummy.
I like them.
You want cereal bar?
I
Say,
cereal.
Mommy,
Bobby.
I want.
I want cereal bar.
Good job.
That was a good
That was
sentence.
very clear.
Yeah.
Slow. He sees it. So the more subtle we can get with it.
Cereal bar.
Do you want more?
Bar.
Can you say, I want more cereal bar?
Cereal bar.
I want more. Good job.
It is a cereal. That's your new favorite word.
You have a new favorite, don't you?
Cereal bar. Who's here? Who's here?
Tell Daddy what you just ate.
What did you just eat? Did you eat something?
What did you eat, Jack? Tell Daddy. Goldfish.
Goldfish?
And what else did you have?
Anything else?
What else did you have?
What else did you eat, Jack?
What is it?
Good, that's answering a question like she asked you to do that.
What is it?
A Nutri-Grain bar. So he
You
just
ate a Nutri-Grain bar?
And the fact that he turned to Daddy to say that too, that was big.
Just right there. Did you catch it on camera, Suzanne?
Yeah, I did.
That was really, and it was so
And
good.
he just answered questions about the past to you.
What?
He just answered questions about the past. Like he never.
That's true.
The doctor last week asked if he could do that.
Okay, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just right here. Right here.
The reason Cheryl is excited about Jack Riley answering Mike's question is that he was able to understand what he said and could recall what he had done in the past without any cues in front of him to remind him. Recalling something in your mind is a complex skill. This is a big leap. It means he grasped language.
That is, of course, the A Word, a really amazing documentary being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It's ongoing. They're still filming Jack Riley. He just turned 4. You can watch the most recent video with him turning 4 by going to their YouTube page. You can watch from the beginning and work your way through, or you can look at specific episodes to see specific things that they're talking about, in particular potty training, which they were able to do with him very quickly, and there's some amazing videos about that. Really worthwhile. I just love this series, and I'm so thrilled that it's being done because somebody needed to do this. I know it's just a matter of time before, you know, some national television network decides to do something like this and to focus on the arc of a family with a child or with children on the autism spectrum, and what it's like going through the ABA therapy. It'll happen. But in the meantime, what I like about this is that it does it and shows, and the focus is not the sensationalism of it, but the focus is the arc of the growing and reaching the full potential. Now, you notice that if you've been watching from the beginning in this series, Jack Riley did have some words when they started working, but his vocabulary was really, really limited. It was not, he was behind. And they started working with him very simply on individual words and labeling things, and they really focused on manding. Manding is when you request things. So anything he wanted. I had this conversation with my son the other day. Then I said to him, you know, when you were little, you didn't get anything unless you worked for it. There was nothing that you got. You didn't get a drink of juice. You didn't get a drink of milk. You didn't get a, you know, any kind of food until you requested it in some way. And remember that manding doesn't mean vocally requesting necessarily. Sometimes it can be gesture or sign. I immediately go to, because this is like the only sign that I remember was more. And so important that we start there, right? But it's not the be-all, end-all, and it's not where we stop. And you see that they've started working with Jack Riley, forcing him, literally, that his manding has to be more than one word now. So he's saying cereal bar, which is so pick and cute. But you hear his mom saying I, and he has to repeat it, I. And she says want, he says want. And then she pauses to see if he's going to fill in the blank. He already knows the label for it, right? He knows the expressive label for this thing is cereal bar. So she's going to prompt him with the I, want, and then she pauses. There's that really pregnant pause, not to, you know, make a pun because she in that video is pregnant, but you know, waiting for him to say, and then he says cereal bar, and you notice immediately they're like, yay, giving him that social praise for it. And they also give him the cereal bar, because that's the thing about manding, it has its own reinforcer, which is that you got the thing that you asked for. But we always want to pair it with that social praise, because eventually we want for praise to be really reinforcing to our kids. And already that's happening at this point with Jack Riley, that he knows when he's done something right, and he appreciates the fact that he's done it right. And not only does he appreciate getting the cereal bar, but that, you know, everybody's thrilled with him. He's a rock star. So I bring that up because what we'll see as the weeks go on is that not only does Jack Riley, they're moving the goalpost away, right? So it's not enough to say cereal bar anymore. Now he has to say, I want cereal bar. And mom is not prompting him on the cereal bar, right? So she's already fading the prompting on that. And soon she's going to fade prompting saying, I want, because he's going to say that on his own. And you know, that will continue to progress to the point where he'll be able to have back and forth conversation. And we already see the beginnings of that, because dad says to him, you know, what did you have before? And he responded. And this is, you know, the first time that he responds to something that happened before. What did you eat before? And he says cereal bar. First he says goldfish, right? And then he says cereal bar. And the mom is thrilled because he just hurdled that obstacle, talking about things that you did in the past. Is it the only time are they gonna still work on it a little bit? Sure, they're gonna work on it, but he's already getting there. He's starting to put the pieces together himself, and it's a really powerful time. Want to encourage you to look at this series, look at the back episodes, and take a look. Is it every child's progress? No, because all of our kids are different. But you're gonna see a really good, I think, representation of what I call the arc of ABA, and the fact that, you know, he takes 2 steps forward, he's going to take a step back occasionally, challenging behavior is going to happen that they didn't see before, and then they're going to work on it and tweak things because they've set their goal. They want this child to reach his fullest potential, and nobody's going to give up. And that's when we get things done. So check it out, the A Word. We're going to take a slight break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Evelyn Gould, BCBA, Board Certified Behavior Analyst. We usually have her on Tuesdays, but we're thrilled to have her today. We call our segment with her Making Room with Evelyn, because we talk with her about having room to see all of the things in life, not just the things that are kicking our can. I think you'll really enjoy it, so stick with us. We're going to be right back with Evelyn Gould.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The Skills Assessment and Curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes Skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The Skills Assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the Skills Assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
And we'll be back with Evelyn Gould, BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst, after these messages. Stick with us.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, you know, where is he, what is he doing, is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but you know, we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What
yeah.
did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, you know, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle. Without that, we wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, ACT Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear ACT Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life. These kids are remarkable. You know, we underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest right now is BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst Evelyn Gould, and we've started calling this segment Making Room with Evelyn. That made you cringe a little bit. Yeah. But it's an expression that you use from time to time, and just to clarify, because I think it's a great expression, and it's made me look at things in a different way. That when you talk about, and frequently you'll talk about how we have a narrow view of things sometimes, that something is happening and our experience of it is that that's the only thing that's happening. And that if we make room for the possibility, we make room for what's happening and make room for the possibility that there's more than that going on, that then we have a more global perspective, which really can turn things around. Yeah. And it's really been helping me when I get overwhelmed, because I get overwhelmed a lot. I have to be honest about that. And so my self-talk has changed a little bit because of our conversations about that I've been able to say, okay, what's happening? And to realize that, you know, that's all that's happening. There's not more, because sometimes I'll stack more things. And then to ask myself, you know, okay, what other things in addition to that aren't so horrible are happening? And it really kind of talks me off the ledge. So I don't want you to cringe over the making room, because I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely helped me a lot as well. I think not just for when you're in the moment of some crisis and you can only, you tunnel vision into only seeing that one thing, and that really doesn't make you necessarily very effective at dealing with that problem, because you can't see the other options or the other ways that you could behave or you could react in response to that. But it also helps when it helps me enjoy the good times too, because sometimes you get ahead of yourself and start spoiling the moment by catastrophizing about things that may or may not happen in the future, or definitely are going to happen, but you're spoiling right now by worrying about them right now instead of just dealing with them when they happen. Or by thinking over and over, ruminating on things that have passed. So whenever I'm in a moment and I start not being able to enjoy, like I went for a short, we call it a mini break, but I believe you don't call it that here. But it's like a little miniature holiday when you're not going on vacation. So I took like a couple of days off at the weekend, but it wasn't really days off work. It was just a weekend trip, and I kind of found myself spoiling it by starting to get worry and think about work things and think about school things and a bunch of other stuff, and I had to bring myself into the moment and kind of do a bit of mindfulness stuff and stop tunnel visioning myself into not being able to enjoy it. And when I brought myself back, I was like, I'm having a really nice time. There's nothing I need to enjoy right now, and then I deal with that stuff next week when I get into it. And bringing that stuff into now wasn't going to help me solve it, because it's not stuff that I can solve till I get into work, or it's not stuff I can solve till I'm not on holiday anymore. So it helps that way too.
Absolutely. And it kind of brings me into one of the things that I promised that we were going to talk about today, which was goal setting. And we had a gentleman in a week ago for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, Doug Baker, and he's an autism dad, and he specializes in financial planning. And after he was done with his interview with us, as he was leaving, he said to both Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson and myself, he said, so, you know, what one word, you know, what's your goal for 2013? But you can only use one word. And so Nancy and I sat here and we're like, trying to pare it down into one word. And I said, oh, that's so hard, because the biggest goal that I'm working on for 2013 is being present, being in the moment. And I don't know how to make that one word, and we all got into a discussion about how do you make that one word, and I don't really know why we have to make it one word, right? Because to me, the bigger deal is that's the thing that I want to work on. I've known for a long time that it's not my strong suit. I was perfectly fine with it not being my strong suit for a long time.
I think that it's not a strong suit for most people, and that our brains are kind of designed to not be present because they want to anticipate all the bad things that could happen and prepare us for all the bad things that could happen, and when we can also like go back in the past and ruminate over the past. And so it's almost like I think most people spend a lot of time in the future or in the past rather than being in the moment, so I don't think it's peculiar to you.
Well, that's interesting to hear, because I always berate myself. My inner talk is, everybody else is in the moment, why can't I be in the moment? Which, in saying that, I'm not in the moment, you know?
And if you look at people's reactions to situations around you, you can be pretty much guaranteed that they're not just reacting to what's happening right now, they're reacting to a bunch of stuff from the future and from the present.
Yes.
And I'd say about 98% of people are reacting to past and present when they're responding to something right now.
Absolutely. I have a friend who says if it's hysterical, it's historical. So if you see somebody really upset about something, chances are it's not really about what's happening in this moment. It's about something that happened before.
And then you need to recognize that, if you can recognize that about yourself too, it can be very helpful. If you recognize that your responses to what's going on right now probably a lot of it isn't about what's happening right now, then that also helps you make room for it and open up and look at it and be like, okay, I need to deal with just what's happening right now, not all this other stuff that I'm bringing to this moment.
Yeah. What's really interesting to me is that, as I said, a long time ago I realized that this was not necessarily the thing that I was good at, and I was okay with it for a really long time. And when we began to suspect that our son had autism, I had a friend who her husband had been working with children on the autism spectrum, and I voiced something to her, and I said, I'm beginning to think that maybe Jem has autism, and she said, what are you talking about? We saw him 6 months ago. He was fine. My husband would have said something. And I said, yeah, no, things have changed. And she said, what are you going to do about it? I said, I don't even know what to do about it. She said, we're coming to your house for dinner tonight so that he can see your son and tell you honestly what he thinks. And I said, great. This is absolutely great. So he did. He came and he played with our son. And afterwards he said, I'm not somebody who diagnoses, but, I think you have enough things that you've said to me that you're concerned about that you should go and, have somebody assess him, which we did. But as I was talking to him, and I said, because really I didn't understand anything about autism at that point. And I said, what exactly is autism? What's the deal with it? And one of the things that he said to me, because I said, why is he doing all these strange things? And one of the things he said, well, we're not 100% sure why the kids do these repetitive and restrictive things, but one of the possibilities is that they don't have a filter. So everything that's happening right now, like there isn't a hierarchy of what's more important. The TV is going and we're talking, and there's, a kettle on the stove and his toys are here and the air conditioner is blowing, and he doesn't have a filter to give those a hierarchy, and it all becomes so overwhelming because he's noticing all of it at the same time that then he has to get to something very small and controllable to sort of deal. That's one possibility. And he listed other things. But as he said this, I went, oh, I think I must have autism then, because that's what happens to me. I get overwhelmed by all of the things, so I have to focus on something really small and minute. And a lot of times I call it baking mental cookies. That I literally will start to, in my head, bake cookies that I'm not making, not eating in real life, but it's this thing that I can focus on. It's not happening in the present. It's not happening in the future. It may be cookies that I made in the past, but it's a place for me to take a mental vacation from all of the stimuli. And what he said to me in that moment was, well, that's great, Shannon, because now when you figure it out of how to stay present and not go to that place of baking mental cookies, when you figure out how to sort out this, the hierarchy of all these things happening, then you'll be a better teacher for your child. And I went, oh, what have you sentenced me to? Now I can't just mentally bake cookies and be okay with it. Now I have to start the process of learning how to figure that out. I really don't want to. And it really, we are having our anniversary this week of 7 years ago that this happened. And I think, in some respects I've gotten better at it, but I have a lot of work to do.
I mean, I think it's very it's a difficult battle that you're fighting, because I think our brains bring us into the future or the past or other places as a defense mechanism or a coping strategy. So it's a problem. Your brain is a problem-solving machine, and so in certain circumstances, whenever you're like locked in a room and you can't get out, that's very helpful. Your brain will go into the future and be like, oh, what happens if this, and this, or what did I do in the past? What happened? How did that feel? I was, trapped is really bad. I need to feel frightened right now. Like, it could be helpful when you can actually solve the problem, but when it's some other kind of situation and you can't get out of, then it's not necessarily the most helpful strategy. Does that make sense? So like if you're a lion in a field and you hear, or you're a rabbit in a field and you hear like a rustly noise, it makes sense to hone in on the noise. But in our daily lives, it maybe doesn't, and we need to kind of go against what our brains naturally want to do, like protect us.
Well, already that's helpful, because you've already said I don't need to look at it as black and white, that it's all bad. That there is an element of this that's useful in my life, and maybe if I sort out and say, but during these moments in time, it's really important that I inhibit my response to that, and that I, it's going to be counterintuitive for me for a while, but if I say to myself, okay, this is one of these moments, and I'm going to, just see what happens if I can be present instead of tuning out and being in this other moment. I probably could do that.
You should be thankful that your brain is trying to help you. Like, it's not trying to sabotage your life in any way. Like, your body is just responding in a way that it's trying to protect you in that moment, or like tune out all that stuff so that it can cope. So it's trying to help you, but it's just not being helpful, or it's not what you need in that moment.
Well, and honestly, it sounds a lot like what we do with our kids when they have those stereotypy behaviors that, we were able to say to ourselves that we're not trying to cut this completely out of his life, but we're trying to teach him when is it appropriate for him to do that. Or to
teach more socially appropriate ways. So we're not saying, we wouldn't, it's not ethical to just go in and say, stop doing that. Because that's meeting a need, that behavior. So your child is always, like, behaviors aren't for no reason. It's always a reason. It's always meeting a need. So it's about figuring out what that need is, and then finding a more appropriate way to meet that need. So decreasing that behavior, but meeting the need another way.
And I can do that for myself as well. I can still meet the need, and maybe have appropriate times in which I fuzz out and tune out, and not be in the present.
So, if your child is engaging in some kind of stereotypy because they just need to tune out for a minute, it's okay to tune out for a minute sometimes, but we just want to help our kids do more appropriate, socially appropriate things in order to tune out. Just like eating a copious amount of food may be a reason or someone might do that to relax themselves, but it's not a very healthy, in the long term, it's not going to be a healthy way to do that. So you want to try and find other ways to give yourself the same feeling of comfort or escape that's appropriate and healthy in the long term.
I need to work on that too.
Well, the problem is, it is very difficult to replace those behaviours, because the reason that we do them in the first place is because they provide an immediate escape from something, or it gives us something immediately, and it works really well. That's why you do it. And so it is a challenge to then replace it with something else that in the moment might take a while for that to start taking on the same properties as these other behaviors. It's a hard battle.
It is a hard battle, but you talk a lot about the compass and looking at what's meeting your values and what isn't meeting your values, and I want to talk more about that, but we're going to take a break first and come back and talk about goals, because we talked earlier today about when we're faced with a moment where something comes up and it could take our attention away from a goal. So we're going to talk more with that with Evelyn Gould, BCBA. Stick with us.
Welcome back, everyone. It's the beginning of a new year, which means the possibilities for new beginnings and starting new traditions. So I figured for the month of January, we should make a calendar for our kids to use. The focus of this project will happen with your children after it's completed. All you need to do to make the calendar is to go to facebook.com/autismlive to download the template I've already made for you guys. And then the other materials you'll be needing are a scissors and some magnets, which is super easy to find at your local craft store. once you have your printed templates and you have your magnets, all you have to do is just take the paper and then assemble it onto the magnet. It's super easy. And then cut out all the shapes. That part is a little bit more tedious, but once you have that done, you're gonna have a calendar that you can use all year round for years to come. So let's get to it. Why is this calendar so cool? Well, first thing, it's that everything is completely modular, like I said before. So you can have your kids practice naming the days of the week and putting them in order. You can even ask them questions like, what month comes after January, for instance. Other things you can do with your child is having them, label the different seasons and then assigning the seasons to the correct months. So there's different ways you can use this based on your child's skill level. And what's cool about this calendar is as your child grows, so is the use value of this magnet calendar, because you can focus on more abstract things with your kid as they develop and work on simpler things with them when they first start working with it. And this is something you can always do every day of the week because the days change, right? So there's always an opportunity to visit the calendar and to use it in your daily lives. And these are just a few examples of the kind of activities you can do while playing with the magnet calendar. I hope you enjoy this activity, and I look forward to seeing you next month. Until then, crack on.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest right now is BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst Evelyn Gould. This is the time of week that we call Making Room with Evelyn, because we're making room for more possibilities and more things in our lives, and I just think that that's a wonderful thing. Now, we talked a little bit during the break about the fact that earlier in the show, I was talking about how when we're setting goals, we choose what we attend to in each and every moment, that we're not victims of that, and that I particularly have a very hard time. I'm not the best at being on time to things, and it makes my husband a little crazy. That it's a little upsetting to him. I've gotten better over the years, but something that can really throw me off is if the phone rings. I feel this obligation to answer the phone and to talk to whoever is on the other end. I have call waiting, and I have the ability to look and see who it is, and I do have the ability as a sentient adult to make a value judgment in the moment and say, I need to get out the door to this thing, and whether it's coming to work or getting someplace with my husband so he's not left standing by the door while I'm talking to the person on the phone, because we've already established on the show that I'm not good at ending conversations. I start the conversation on the phone and say, I can't talk for long because we're leaving. It's not helping me. I still don't know how to end the conversation. So, and I was saying earlier that, we have to make a judgment in that moment, and you talk all the time about this compass that's pointing us towards being who we want to be or not. So talk to us a little bit about how we make a value judgment in the moment. About whether we're going to attend to one thing or another, because sometimes it gets dicey.
It's very hard, and I think the types of circumstances where you want to think about your compass is when you're in a stressful situation or some kind of situation that's very difficult and you don't know what to do, or you think you might be about to make a decision that isn't necessarily going to be helpful to you in the long run. So in your circumstance with the phone and getting out the door, you have a value. So the values is the compass, and that's like who you want to be as a person and what you want to stand for in your life, and that's something that kind of carries on throughout your life and is always there regardless. So it's not really something that you achieve like a goal, but goals move us towards or away from those things that really matter to us. So in that moment when the phone's ringing, your value is that you want to be a good employee or whatever it is. I don't know what your particular values are, but say your value is to do well in work and to be a successful employee and to be a better employee. And as part of that, your goal is to get to work on time. So in that moment, when you're going for the phone, that's going to move you away from that value. Because you're not going to make it to work on time. So not only are you moving away from your value, but you're not going to meet your goal.
I sort of feel like I want to get a couch and I want to lay down because This invariably turns into Shannon therapy. But as you're saying this, I'm realizing what part of the problem is, because there's two goals that are bumping up against each other. Because while, of course, I want to be a good employee, I mean, that is a part of my value system, but more importantly, when I come here, my whole thing that I say to myself is, and that I say right before we start the show, is if I can help one person today. If I can help one person, and so, you know, I might be having a crappy day, but what gets me in the car and gets me here is this idea of I want to help somebody. And when the phone rings, that might be somebody I want to help too.
It's never that simple. So it isn't ever that simple, and you will a lot of the time be in a situation where you're having to choose which value is most important in that moment. And I certainly can think of a situation recently where my value, I share a value with you, Shannon, in that I want to help people, and I'm very compassionate, and I want to support people, and I saw the phone ringing too, and it was a certain person that I knew that I know has problems, and I immediately want to answer the phone because I want to help that person, but I also know that every time I have an interaction with that person, it's very negative on me, and it's something that I need to kind of move myself away from that. So I had a value of wanting to look after myself and be compassionate to myself and care for myself and support my own self, and also to help on other people. So I had these two things, like, what do I do? And I decided actually in that circumstance that I wanted to look after myself, and that was more important, and that was more important than supporting that person, because also if you don't look after yourself, then in the end you're not going to be useful to anybody. So that was the decision that I made, but it's very, very difficult because there are a lot of circumstances where you are having to choose which direction you want to go.
Yes, I think that's a perfect example, because I'm a woman, so I can't speak for men. I'm sure that men come up against this also, but I know when I talk to women friends, this is a huge issue for all of us. And when you become a mom, I think it gets that much bigger about how do we help ourselves while helping other people, and making those judgments, and how difficult that can be. And I imagine that a lot of you are out there. We talked a little bit this morning too about having personal ambition, and that for a long period of time I thought that I wasn't allowed to have wants and needs because I had a child on the spectrum. And I've now been told by women who are smarter than I am and further along the way that just isn't the case. That I get to be a person too, I get to be a whole person, I get to want things and need things and need to be taken care of. This is crazy talk to me. I'm still getting my head wrapped around it. But there's a part of my gut reacts and says that must be true, because I would think that would be true for anybody else.
I think sometimes you can resolve it by peeling back some more layers, and then you realize that two things which seem really conflicting are actually part of the same value. So, you know, if you value being a good parent to your child, and that in your mind is like putting your child's needs first and always being about your child, but then you also should be looking after you're thinking, I need to look after myself, blah, 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 blah. But actually, if you peel that back, those are both coming from the same place, and that's being a good parent means being a healthy, well-adjusted, calm person who's able to love and able to make good parenting decisions, which doesn't always mean giving your child the lollipop when he's upset, because you don't want him to be upset. You know, we all know that's sometimes being a good parent is making difficult decisions and making your child upset. So I think sometimes you can shift back. You just need to shift back a few steps to find what the real underlying value is, and then it makes it slightly easier to do something that initially feels like, well, if I look after myself, then I'm moving myself away from being the ideal parent.
And I say it all the time here on the show that we have to take care of ourselves, because if we don't, and I've seen it all too often, autism parents that get sick and are no longer with us, and of course that's our greatest fear for all of us, is that what happens when we're not here to take care of our children. So I get it intellectually, but in the moment to moment, we need reminders. And I was saying earlier that I've started giving myself, because this worked with my son, is visual aids, that I have put a little post-it next to the phone with a question mark, just to remind me to ask myself, is this what I want to choose to do right now instead of just reacting? To be mindful, that thing you were saying about being mindful. Doesn't mean I can't answer the phone, but just to ask myself a couple of questions of, is this a good time to take a phone call right now? Is it appropriate for me? Is it appropriate for my life? Is it appropriate for what I'm trying to accomplish?
Right. And so, like, for me in that moment where I'm choosing whether I was going to answer that phone call, I can also ask that question and think, does answering this phone call, is that the only way that I can be supportive and helpful to somebody? And is there a way that I can look after myself and be a kind, compassionate, supportive person who cares?
Yes.
And of course, I don't have to, you know, of course, just because I don't answer that phone call right in that moment, it doesn't negate all those things.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But isn't it interesting that I think it requires us being mindful in that moment? I think that a lot of time I just react.
Yeah. And I think as well as being mindful, then you have to realize that usually when you're making choices to move towards values, that along with that comes feelings, difficult feelings.
Yes.
And that's because it matters. Like if you're making a decision that doesn't matter or isn't anything to do with values, it's probably not going to come along with all those difficult gut feelings that you get. You know, so when I did make that decision to look after myself, it came along with it came all these like difficult feelings about not answering the phone, and
like how could you?
And you know, and it was hard, but I just had to make room for those feelings and make room for allowing myself, and then being compassionate to myself, and then I was able to tolerate it, or you know, get through it, accept it.
I think that's really important too, because I think a lot of times when I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I have emotions, and then I go, oh well, obviously it must be this is wrong then. If I'm having emotions,
it means that it matters, and it means that there's a value there somewhere, and then if you can tease out that value, then it's going to make it a lot easier to accept that situation. At least it does, certainly does for me. Like I always just alert myself to whenever I'm struggling or feel anxious or have difficult feelings, and remember, like, well, this is because it matters, and there's what's the value, and then usually I can find the value and then be like, then it's easier for me to say it's okay to kind of get through this and be in this right now, because I'm moving myself towards something that really matters.
And a lot of us are driven by the idea of being comfortable, and a lot of times when you have an emotion, it's not comfortable. But it's important to realize, and I know this, it wasn't until I was in my 30s that somebody said to me, you're having an emotion. It's not an emergency. No one is dying. You're having an emotion right now. And I remember in that moment going, oh my goodness, why did nobody ever tell me this when I was a teenager? I'm having an emotion. I'm not dying. I've never died from an emotion. I've never seen anybody die from an emotion. You know, but in the moment it really feels like something huge and horrible is happening.
Yeah, and the thing is, the more you suppress that and the more you're trying to get away from feeling it, the more big it's going to feel.
Right.
So that's another problem. So when
and the
it
more
finally
you have to
comes
eat.
up, that when it, yeah, exactly. So when it finally hits you, it's going to seem so incredibly overwhelming, but the more you accept and make room for these feelings, then the less overwhelming and massive they seem. It's like a pressure cooker.
Oh, that just makes me want to cry, just because we spend our time doing that. And certainly autism adds to that. You know, there's so much to be done, and we talk all the time about, you know, well, you got to do this and you got to do that, and there's the paperwork and there's the financial aspect of this and figuring out your choices and all that, that you can just be on a treadmill and say to yourself, I'll worry about what I'm feeling later on.
And you can still do that by making room for those things. So you're just allowing them to be there rather than like squishing them and not allowing them to be there and struggling with them. You're just allowing them to be there and coming along for the ride. So you kind of free yourself up for not having to, because you're not having to struggle with them.
Right. And so that's okay too, as long as we're mindful of it. Absolutely fascinating. We're going to talk more about this, but we're going to take we are. We're going to take a quick break. I'm trying to decide what we're doing, but I'm too interested in what we're talking about. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Evelyn Gould. Stick with us.
DCF and DAC Gallery. Started in 1946. A group of parents had some children that they wanted to engage in productive activities.
Want to show us your artwork in the gallery?
Yeah.
Yeah, show us. I want to see. And the 2 top ones are yours?
Yeah.
Very cool. Are you proud of them?
Yeah.
We actually work with about 150 students, and they're all special needs artists.
I like working with clay. Clay is my outlet because clay can mold in all kinds of shapes.
When they come to the program, they don't realize that the potential that they have of being great artists. And once they work with the professional artists that we have here, you know, they begin to discover that they do have talent. When they make that discovery of their talent, and when there are even some that have challenging behaviors, their behavior would change.
This is my 3rd year here. This is like home sweet home. Like family, friends, they're like family. So I like it here.
Some have moved from here to go to college, even get jobs. That's great, and molding them to be the people that they never thought that they would be.
Welcome back. Our guest right now is Evelyn Gould, BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst. And Evelyn has a great deal of experience working with children on the autism spectrum, which is part of the reason why we have her come and join us. But she also speaks very effectively to the experience of parents and allowing us space. I mean, it's really, I tell you this, not enough, but I tell you from time to time how much I appreciate the fact that you don't poo-poo what's happening with the autism parent, but you give us strategies to literally make room for what's happening and more, which is always so freeing to me. I always feel better after I talk to you. And we normally have Evelyn on Tuesdays, and we will have her next Tuesday, but we have her special today on Thursday. And so wonderful to have you here. We've been talking about setting goals on the show, and you and I were just talking about setting goals and about having in mind, you know, values and that sometimes it's going to bring up emotion, and that's okay. That when I love the fact that you say when you're having emotions about it, it means that there's an important value at stake, which is a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
That isn't as overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were talking about it, emotions feeling like an emergency state.
Yes.
And they kind of do. So when we're saying that they're alerting you to a value, it may not mean, it could either mean that you're moving away from one or towards one, but there's definitely one there. So you could be feeling an emotion because you're actually moving away.
Yeah.
So it's very important to identify the value and then help yourself get back on track. But you will also feel emotions when you move towards values because you're possibly dealing with something difficult in the moment, or in order to move yourself towards the value, you have to accept some feelings and accept some circumstances that are difficult.
Yes, absolutely.
Or you could be moving towards one value, which means you're turning the cube around and you're losing sight of another value, like we just talked about. There's often two competing things
absolutely
going on.
Well, and it makes sense to me. You know, I cry a lot on the show. I get emotional on the show and I cry a lot on the show, and I think people who watch this tend to think that I'm a really emotional person and I cry a lot. And the funny thing about it is that people outside the autism community consider me somebody who is like hardened steel, that I never ever cry about anything ever. You know, everybody else can be sobbing and I'm like, you know, that's not happening. But having a child on the spectrum made me emotionally have to be a little bit more open about things. And I was saying the other day that every time we would come to clinic at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and we would sit there for 2 hours and talk about where Jem was and what we were working on and how he was doing and what goals he was achieving and what goals we were going to add, we would leave here after 2 hours, and the very first thing that I would say when we would get in the car is, I feel like crying. And my husband, you know, for 5 years would say, what's wrong? Even though we did this every 2 weeks, I would say, I feel like crying. He would say, what's wrong? And I would say, no, it's not that something is wrong. It's just an awareness of where we are, and it makes me very emotional. You know, we're so much further than where we were. We still have a ways to go, and it's emotional for me. And I never really could put my finger on it, but you just said, you know, that it can be emotional, that you have emotions when you're moving towards a goal. I'll have to go home and tell my husband that because he would always say, "What happened? Why?" No, it's just this is just how I feel. I feel like crying, and it would make me, to this day, the journey that our kids take makes me so emotional.
Often when you're moving towards a value, you're also letting go of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that for me, that does seem a lot of the case for me, and because I'm making a choice in a moment to be the person that I want to be, which means I have to let go of struggling with a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I get like a loss feeling, or it's like a freeing feeling but a loss feeling, and like there's lots of emotions.
Yeah, I never really thought about that before because how we envision ourselves, especially when we're young, there's all these possibilities, and as you move towards some possibilities, it means letting go of other possibilities, and that is a little bit of a death.
And I think just accepting that things are the way they are and you're having the emotions that they are is also a little bit of a surrendering feeling.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. Powerful, powerful stuff for us to consider while working with our children on the autism spectrum, and not being a victim to those emotions that come up, but being in tune with them. We're pretty much out of time, so I want to start by thanking you so much for being here and shedding light on all of that. I do
got away from the goals, but
yeah, well, but I think it goes hand in hand with the goals, because when we have those emotions, it has the ability to take us off course sometimes. So I actually think that it's pretty on target, and maybe next week we can talk about looking at how we measure if we're set goals and measure them. Maybe that can be something we can talk about next week. But I want to take just a second here as we end the show to remind you, and Matt's going to show you all the different ways that you can get in contact with us. There are lots of different ways for you to interact, and we appreciate your interaction. I want to remind you that tomorrow we are going to have a very special guest. Dr. Jonathan Tarbox is going to be with us talking about research, and in particular we're going to talk about that new research study that about children who lose their diagnosis over time. I know in the headlines it said children grow out, but if you read the study, it does not say that. It says after a lot of intensive treatment, they no longer qualify for a diagnosis, and Dr. Tarbox is going to take some time with us to talk about what the study measured and why it's so important moving forward, what it's going to mean for our kids. So that will be tomorrow in the second half. We'll be here at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time, and again, he'll be with us the second hour. You may have caught him this morning on Fox News talking about that study as well. And we're thrilled to be able to do that. And we will be joined next week, next Tuesday, I believe, by Evelyn Gould again, and have some really exciting things in the hopper for next week. So, but thank you very much for joining us today. And I also want to remind you guys that it's the last 2 days, we're in the last few days that you can get those t-shirts by Paper Clouds Apparel. Check them out at papercloudsapparel.com, and they have a Facebook page. You'll see that there's a girl's t-shirt and a boy's t-shirt. It is my son's robot drawing on the boy's t-shirt. We're just as proud of him as we could be. It's ridiculous. I'm the proud mom talking about this, but it is a very cute t-shirt, if I do say so myself, and it goes towards a good cause. The Paper Clouds Apparel does hire individuals that have special needs, and a portion of the proceeds goes to the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So I hope you will participate, and the girl's shirt is just pickin' cute too. It's just absolutely precious, and that was done by a little girl who also is receiving services from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So I hope you will check that out, and I want to remind all of you that we have a petition that we're hoping that you will sign. You can find that on our Facebook page. As I said, we'll be back tomorrow with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox and more. We're continuing to talk about goal setting and more. Some really exciting stuff, including compliance tomorrow is on the menu for the day. So until then, I hope that you will please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.